I'm going to read to you first a very short inscription from Sayatini Dasgupta's book, Game of Stars. To the diaspora born, you who straddle universe's code switch effortlessly, zip between dimensions as if on a comet's back. And to my son and daughter, born in a new place and new time, who belong to the world, and who are my world, my galaxy, my multiverse, you are the heroes we have been waiting for. So, a few years ago, when my oldest son was about 5, we were talking to my mom, and we got the phone on speaker, and my mom said, "So how's Sagar doing?" Sagar. In Gujarati, it means the ocean. Sagar. Can you hear the waves lapping at the shore? Sagar. Can you hear the flow of water? And my son, who's listening because it's on speakerphone, perks up and says, "Nani, that's not how you say my name. It's Sagar." Harsh, Germanic, crisp, Sagar. And I look at my son and I think, where is the Indianness in this half-breed, hybrid child? I had assumed he would inherit it by osmosis. Didn't he know what it felt like to go to Diwali festivals and listen to the high-pitched singing of the Indian aunties while the uncles drummed on tablas and we kids danced garbaras and dandiyaras together and all night long until we were one big, throbbing, pulsing, Indian, sweaty, sequined, multicolored organism? Didn't he know what it was like to scoop gerinoras, mango pulp, with hot, oily booty and shove the gooey mess in his mouth as fast as possible so he could grab the next booty before somebody else did? Didn't he know what it was like to be able to slip chameleon-like into an entire people, an entire subcontinent, thousands of years old traditions? But then I thought, wait a minute, why would I expect my children to have a cohesive sense of Indianness when I had spent pretty much my entire life rebelling against the idea of singular identity and singular culture? Why would I expect that? And it's true. As a child of immigrants, as a daughter of immigrants growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, I was very resistant to my parents' desire to enculturate me into their sense of Indianness. Their sense of what it meant to be an Indian that they had carried over an ocean with them, and that was frozen in time from when they were in India, a figment of their imagination that really didn't exist outside of their diaspora of Phoenix. I remember on the weekends when we have Indian events, my parents would drag me, kicking and screaming, with the Jane Austen book in my hands. I remember going to India as a child, and I remember this one particular episode when we saw tourists, white American tourists, and I felt like I was wearing a mask, and I wanted to go up to them and say, wait, I'm more like you, I'm American, I'm not really like these people. And I remember when I fell in love with a white man in law school, how I jumped at the chance to escape this cultural box that I saw a lot of my Indian girlfriends' parents putting them in by helping them with arranged marriages that they wanted to have. And yet, I still felt this pain for my children because I thought the closest they're ever going to come to being Indian is eating Indian food every once in a while, wearing the Indian clothes that my parents bring back from India for them, and I force them to wear them on picture day in school, which I do. And when I do get around to taking them to India, they will be the tourists in their mother's motherland. So I don't think, for me, it's useful to try to hold on to something that's already changed. Instead, the question I really want to think about is, when you lose one sense of culture, do you automatically gain another? So when I think about the culture of my children, I think of the Sonoran Desert, which is their homeland. I mean, the kids cannot step out the door without looking for a rattlesnake. And they are really good at using tweezers to, pull needles out of the soft flesh. And the other day, we found this little hedgehog cactus in a remote part of the backyard, and it was blooming these hot pink flowers. And we can be found often at sunset time, gazing at the Tucson mountains and the striation of colors and listening to the howling of coyotes. And my kids have been coming with me to the Tucson CSA, the cultural support, the supported agriculture group that we get our produce from. They know what temporary beans are, even though they wrinkle their noses at them. They can't wait for okra season. They eat them like they're going out of style all summer long. And in the fall, when the kusha squash harvest comes in, they pick the biggest one they can find so we can spend weekends making kusha pumpkin pies for our neighbors and our friends. But there's a culture of people in Tucson that my children also belong to. Because Tucson is the city of their birth, and Tucson is a city of immigrants. Like all American cities are cities of immigrants. Because almost all of us in this nation are immigrants. Whether our immigrant forebears came here like my parents did half a century ago, or whether they came on the Mayflower. And the culture of people in Tucson, there is a culture of people in Tucson who have banded together in the face of what I consider one of the major crises of our times. And this crisis is our nation's reaction to and inhumanity towards a subset of these immigrants. And I like to call them Americans in waiting. It's not my term, it's a term by a very well-known legal scholar. And there's a culture of people in Tucson who have come together to say, we are not going to let any American in waiting face the nightmare that is the removal proceeding process or deportation proceedings alone. And we're not going to let anyone face that without legal assistance or legal representation. And so this culture of people in Tucson have created this organization called Keep Tucson Together. And every Thursday night, they are there doing a clinic at Pueblo High School on the south side, where they provide all kinds of legal assistance and representation to Americans in waiting in our community who are being put through something that nobody should be put through. So I go to this clinic on Thursdays with my clients from the with my students from the Workers' Rights Clinic at the College of Law. And one day we're there, and we're there as workers' rights, we're giving employment information to people, and this family walks over to us, and it's a family of 4, and it's mom and it's dad, and there's a girl, she looks about 10, there's a boy, he looks about 7, my kids' ages. And the 10-year-old is the one translating. And she's telling me that dad was taken away in the middle of the night by ICE to a detention facility, which is like a maximum security prison, in the middle of nowhere in Eloy, and they didn't know what was going to happen to him. And I could see in her face, because I have a 10-year-old, that she does not want to be there. She wants to be home, playing softball practice, maybe at softball practice, maybe at home, playing with her friends, maybe doing homework. And I say to her, what is it that your dad needs to know? And she's speaking to me in crystal clear English. Her English is like mine. She is a U.S. citizen. Her brother is a U.S. citizen. And as I'm looking at, and by the way, the only reason why her father got out of the detention facility is because these pro bono lawyers and pro bono non-lawyers, everyone working for free at KTT, provided representation and assistance. And by the way, it's also not so easy to know whether someone has a right to remain in this country or not. Immigration law is second, maybe only to the tax code in terms of complexity. Maybe more so. And I'm looking at this girl, and I'm looking at her brother, and I see in their faces and in their eyes, the faces and eyes of my children. And I think, this is my children's community. This is my children's culture. Right now, it is a culture of fear and despair and heartache and they need to experience that too. Sagar and Pavan, Sagar and Pavan. I hope they will join me in the in-between spaces where children of immigrants live. And I hope that from those in-between spaces, we can create a culture that is infused with our love and our fierceness and our shared humanity.